home, this broadcast is going to be live on Comcast Channel 8 in Milford, and if it's Verizon, it will be Channel 38. And then tomorrow, it will be on YouTube. You just put in Milford TV channel, and you can watch it on YouTube tomorrow. I want to thank the people at Jessica Hayne and Digital Clarity for setting all that up for us.
Could we have everyone take their seats, please? So, I'm Steve Trump, and I want to welcome you on behalf of Citizens for Milford organization. And we thank everybody who's here for braving the elements and coming here tonight. Now, your presence here expresses your commitment to be informed and intelligent and responsible voters. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presence here. On behalf of Citizens for Milford, we also welcome here tonight's guests of honor, candidates for state representative, incumbent Representative John Fernandes, and his challenger, Mendon Selectman Mark Reel, and candidates for state senator, incumbent Senator Richard Moore, and his challenger, Representative Ryan Fatman. And thank you, all of you, four of you, for agreeing to participate tonight. Before we begin, I ask that we all please stand and experience each in our own way a moment of silence in memory of David Morganelli, a dedicated citizen of this town. Thank you. The purpose of tonight's forum is to enable the Milford public to hear directly from candidates in a fair and balanced manner, and to enable you, the voters, to ask the candidates your own questions. I want to introduce my co-chair of Citizens for Milford, John Seaver, who will explain what our format is.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for coming here this evening. I just want to take a minute of your time and go over the ground rules for tonight's debate. So the format is, there's going to be two parts. The first half is the state representative race. The second half will be the state senate race. And in between, we'll take a short intermission. So we will begin with opening statements from each candidate, and they will be limited to 3 minutes each. Then we will move to what we're calling the challenge portion, where the candidates will have questions prepared to ask their opponent. So each candidate will have 3 questions they will ask the opponent, and the opponent also will have 3 questions, and they will ask their opponent. Once that portion is completed, we will move to the citizen participation portion, where you, the audience, will ask questions through raising your hands, and we'll have one of our assistants come over and bring the microphone. And then we will move to closing statements from each candidate, 3 minutes each. Just a couple of other points. We're also using a color-coded system for time management. Green, this is mostly for the candidates' benefit. Green means you can continue talking. Yellow is you only have 30 seconds left. And red is stop talking. And finally, we also ask you all to hold your applause until the end of the debate. and so that we can have a nice orderly forum. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Steve Treadle.
Okay, so if we could have John Fernandez. And Selectman Mark Reel. And John won the coin toss beforehand, so he's going to be first to present his opening statement.
Thank you, Steve and John. Standing at the back of the hall tonight, I recognize these microphones are pretty sensitive, so I'll try not to talk too loudly and blow anybody out of the room here. I do want to first thank John and Steve and Citizens for Milford for organizing this. We don't get a lot of opportunity to connect as candidates and to connect with groups of people like this in a way in which you get to ask us questions in the open public. And by organizing this, you also, cooperating with the cable station, give an opportunity to allow this to go out live and also to be replayed. So that's really good. And also, thank you for continuing as a group, because we've seen, I know Mark has seen it in his town, and we've seen it in others, where you can't get citizens to participate in government, and you find people doing double duty, sitting on 2 and 3 boards. And if this can encourage more people to get involved in government, then it's a good thing, so thank you. In terms of openings, I will just say to you that the hardest questions I face as a candidate over all the time that I've served in office is, why are you running for office and why should I vote for you? It's such a broad question that it makes it difficult to answer. If I'm one-on-one, I get the chance to say, well, what's important to you? What's the issue that's on your mind? Let's talk about it, and let's talk about how I would address that particular issue. But the overriding thing that I've found in the number of years that I've served in office is the question is really about, or the answer is really about trust. When you elect someone to office, you're hiring somebody to represent you. You're hiring somebody who's going to go and act on your behalf in a way that you can't really always imagine at the time that you actually cast that vote. We run on hot button issues, certainly. What is the issue of the day? What is the issue of the campaign? But the truth is, I found over the 40 plus years that I've been involved in government that we often end up governing on issues we never anticipated. And I'll give you the perfect example of that. When I ran for state representative in 2006, things were in pretty good shape when I took office in 2007. In 2008, the economy nearly collapsed. And we were in a recession, but not your typical 18 month to 2-year recession. It became clear that we were going to be in a very long recession. And so I had to act on these things I didn't expect to. So it's about judgment and experience and what you know about the person's experience and how they'll exercise that judgment, because that's what you want to elect. You want to elect a person whose judgment you trust. So let's talk about that tonight, and I look forward to the opportunity to answer some questions. Thank you.
Perfect, John. You hit the red right on the money.
I had that planned, by the way.
Mark?
Okay, I'd like to start off by thanking the Citizens for Milford group for hosting this forum. And I'd also like to thank Representative Fernandez for being here tonight. Tonight, my goal is to explain to the voters why I am running and provide them with the information they need to make a clear choice on November 4th. As a selectman in Mendon, I aim to help people live comfortably in their community and to be able to live an affordable life to provide for their families. Local aid has been a key factor in how our communities provide the services that we all deserve. When our state government fails to provide the aid our towns need to pay for schools, roads, and public safety, we should turn to our representatives to vote to increase the funding. Yet Representative Fernandez voted to disallow discussion on local aid during the FY15 budget discussions. I will always vote for increasing local aid and will never disallow discussion on any topic. Illegal immigration has rocked our communities, our Commonwealth, and our nation. As a local official, I am concerned with the unsustainable path we are on and the pressures that this burden is putting on the taxpayers. My great-grandparents immigrated from Armenia in the early 1900s to escape a genocide. They came here and they raised their families, and they worked hard to provide for their family, and they worked to grow the strongest economy in the world. The time has come that we step up to protect our communities against the people who have broken the law. The taxpayers cannot continue to pay for the 58,000 illegal immigrants on Mass Health or the many illegal immigrants receiving EBT welfare, which our state auditor recently has found $9.5 million in fraud. It is time our representatives take real action to make Massachusetts less attractive for illegal immigrants. As a student at Framingham State University, I find it to be unfair that Representative Fernandez supports giving in-state tuition to illegal immigrants, while myself and other college students work very hard to pay our way through college. Our lawmakers must stop helping the lawbreakers and start protecting the taxpayers. As the Assistant Operations Manager at Southwick Zoo, I have seen the effects of a state government that does not listen to the needs of the people. If we
Mark.
expect...
Finish up.
Okay.
Wrap up.
There's just a few real-life examples quickly that I wanted to add in, which was that, our state government is not working with the people and talking about the laws that are put in place. And I wanted to start talking about real-life examples of what will continue to happen, not only in our businesses, our communities, but it's time that Beacon Hill works for the people again. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for the challenge questions, and each candidate will have prepared 3 questions to ask his opponent. Each candidate will have 1 minute to ask his opponent the question, and the challenger will have 2 minutes to respond, and then the candidate asking the question will have 1 minute to respond to that. Okay? So we will start with Mark.
Sure. John, in just 12 days, we will vote to elect a new leader as governor for Massachusetts. My question to you is, who will you be voting for?
I thought that was a private matter.
Well, I think it's important for us to voice our opinions on who's going to lead our state.
Oh, I was only joking with you. As an elected official in a state representative's position, I think people are going to expect that I am endorsing a candidate, and I am going to be voting for Martha Coakley for governor. What about yourself?
I will be proudly supporting Charlie Baker for governor. Just something I want to say to that is, so just to be clear, you're supporting Martha Coakley, who has said that she's in favor of giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants, that it's not illegal to be illegal in Massachusetts, and most recently, in a debate between herself and Charlie Baker, said she would not be opposed to allowing illegal immigrants to vote.
It wouldn't be the first time that I've disagreed with the governor of my party. As you may very well know, Deval Patrick and I have had our rows over illegal immigration over the last 8 years. Quite a few of them, in fact. And one of them is about driver's licenses for illegals, which you are probably aware. I serve on the Transportation Committee. There was a bill filed, the Safe Driving Bill, so-called, that would have allowed licenses for undocumented workers and citizens, or not citizens, but undocumented immigrants here, or illegally here, and that I led a fight in that committee, and we defeated that bill in committee, essentially by a vote of 13-3. So I'm pretty well solid on the record as to my position on that. I don't support in-state tuition, by the way, as you mentioned in your opening remarks. And I think that I filed probably more legislation to try and address the impacts of illegal immigration than any other legislator in the House of Representatives. So I know what's going on in my community relative to illegal immigration. I've taken that issue on, and I'll continue to take it on.
Next question, Mark.
The next question is going to be, Representative Fernandez, you claim to be a leader in addressing illegal immigration. You voted against requiring a Social Security number for applying for taxpayer-funded benefits. You voted against repealing in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. That was implemented by Governor Patrick, and I know you just said that you did not do that. But I do have the roll call vote to go along with that. And you also voted against penalizing cities that consider themselves sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. So again, how can you claim to be a leader in addressing illegal immigration?
Well, I think what you've got to understand is how votes come up. First of all, roll calls are asked for on amendments to bills that are completely irrelevant to the bill in question. And you'll remember that there was a flyer sent out by an organization that's been supporting you and running some pretty negative ads about me, in which there was an absolute lie told that I voted in favor of illegal immigrants over veterans because an amendment came up which said nothing about illegal immigrants, by the way, but sought certain verification for housing within our public housing. And it was to a bill that it had nothing to do with, and it was ruled out of order by the chair. And so, yes, I voted against that, and that vote's been twisted to say somehow I was supporting illegals over veterans, which is absolutely absurd. And if it ever happened, the veterans organizations would have been up in arms about it. So it didn't happen. And in fact, you are aware, we passed legislation, welfare legislation, that requires Social Security numbers, and I voted for that. So there are times when amendments will come up or issues will come up relative to a particular issue, and it's not appropriate to take up at that time. In fact, it may hurt other things we're working on. So if we're working on comprehensive welfare reform, which we did, including requiring photo IDs, requiring Social Security numbers, requiring transition work opportunities to be taken advantage of by people applying, putting in new fraud entities within the Attorney General's office and the state police. When you do all of those things, you want to do them in a comprehensive way, and if you try and one-off them, they don't always work. So yeah, you'll find a vote here and there in my record that you can twist any way you want, as Mass Fiscal Alliance has done on your behalf in this campaign, but you can't change the truth. And the truth is that we have passed welfare reform. Even Charlie Baker admitted that. Charlie Baker's been saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that about welfare reform. And when confronted and told, but they've already passed that legislation, he said, well, yes, I want people to remember and understand that I intend to implement that legislation.
John, you have 1 minute.
So I just, can I
If you, yeah,
respond
1
to
minute.
that? You mentioned that you did pass welfare reform legislation, but the question is, has it worked? Seeing that just this month, the auditor released her report showing $9.5 million in fraud. Maybe you did support and pass some legislation, but the question is it working? And the people that I have talked to, thousands of people through this district, one of the main concerns they have is welfare and reforms that actually work. So that's all I have to say on that.
Your third question, Mark.
Final question. Representative Fernandez, in 2013, you voted for the devastating tech tax that was not good for our economy and was not carefully discussed with the business community. In the same year, you voted to repeal that same tax. Why did you and the legislature not take the steps to ensure that the tech tax would not negatively affect businesses in the first place?
The tech tax was part of the overall plan that was put together by the folks in Ways and Means to address the transportation issue that we were trying to fund without raising the gas tax by an exorbitant amount, without turning to other kinds of taxes. The tech tax was one that came through without opposition initially. There was no advocacy saying that this was a bad idea. What was advanced to us was that there were services being performed in the technical area in terms of going into businesses and essentially constructing what might otherwise have been taxed as a product if it were sold on the street, and that we were going after that very narrow opportunity to essentially collect sales tax on things that probably should be taxed. It wasn't until, and the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, by the way, had indicated that there was no problem with that as we were moving it through. And it wasn't until near the very end, when we were about to pass the budget, that a question first got raised about it. It was too late for us to withdraw it from the budget and still have a balanced budget, which we're constitutionally obligated to do. So we moved forward, and as soon as we got clarity from DOR that they were not reading the bill the way we were reading it, we moved to repeal it. The debate really was at that point, how do we replace the money? My advocacy at that point was we don't. We allow the opportunity for growth in our budget to take it on. The truth of the matter is, Mark, we made a mistake. And I'm prepared to admit that. And I make mistakes. Mistakes do happen. I'm not infallible. But we rely an awful lot on people who are in the business to advocate to us, and we hear from a lot. And you'll learn, you'll see that. If you get there, you'll see that you rely a lot upon the advocates to tell you what's right and wrong about a bill. Nobody came to us and said there's a problem with this bill when we were moving it forward.
Mark, you have 1 minute to respond.
Well, I would just start off by saying that thank you for admitting that was a mistake,
I got no problem with that.
but I would not have voted for a tax increase in the first place, which that was part of a $500 million tax increase to the people across this state, which included the gas tax, which is now tied to inflation. So, just so everyone is aware, I will not vote to increase taxes in my term as state representative. And also, so you're aware, since 2008, $2.1 billion has been, the taxes have been increased $2.1 billion. So that's all I have to say on that.
John, your turn.
Steve, you know that when we first set up this forum, I told you, and he visited me again a week ago and asked me about it, that I would not be asking any questions of Mark in this forum. It's not a style I've ever used in the 40-plus years that I've held public office. I view, and just so you understand, folks, I view what we're doing here tonight as a job interview. And I would never go into a job interview and ask or talk about somebody else who is competing for the same position. So I honestly don't have any questions for Mark, and I'm here prepared to answer any questions from the audience, and I'd just as soon either wave that time over to him if he has more questions, or make the opportunity available immediately for questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you, John. We will then move on to questions from the audience. And citizen participation here, I'd like to offer some ground rules here. We would invite any member. This is the longest part of our session here, and we hope everybody has plenty of questions because we have 25 minutes for each race here for people to ask questions. This is your opportunity to ask the questions. Okay, so what you do is raise your hand, and one of our assistants will go to you with the microphone. And please be considerate when you ask a question. We reserve the right to dismiss insensitive or inappropriate questions. And please limit your question to 30 seconds. Make it a question, not a statement.
Yes, thank you. My question is for Mr. Rell, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I apologize if I don't. On the issue of illegal immigration, can you identify any one of the other 49 states in the United States that you believe is effectively and appropriately handling this challenge, and why?
Well, I'm focused on Massachusetts, and Massachusetts has been a state in the nation that is making it. It's a magnet for illegal immigrants because of what we're doing in terms of providing taxpayer-funded benefits. It's easy to live in Massachusetts for illegal immigrants. When we have an attorney general who says it's not illegal to be illegal in Massachusetts, we should obviously see that there is no interest from our state government to address illegal immigration. And until the federal government protects the borders, we need to take action in stopping illegal immigrants from coming to our communities. It's our state's responsibility to protect taxpayers and to protect residents in their communities. So, to answer your question again, I'm focused on Massachusetts and what we can do in leading the nation in trying to curb that problem.
John, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I can't speak to what's going on in the 49 other states relative to how they're handling the impacts of illegal immigration. Let's be clear, it's a federal issue. We go all the way back to 1987 when Ronald Reagan and the Congress at that time passed an amnesty bill that allowed 2.5 million people in this country to apply for citizenship with the promise that they would seal the borders and create intelligent and workable immigration policy. They did the amnesty, they didn't do the other two. So today we have anywhere from 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 million people in our country illegally and more coming. I've seen the devastation that can create in my community. I think Massachusetts is actually, Senator Moore and I filed legislation which actually tried to address what our chief of police told us was the real issue, which was the X registration and closing that loophole. And we got that legislation passed in a bipartisan fashion. And frankly, it strengthened penalties for illegal operation of an automobile. We did a lot with it. Unfortunately, the administration didn't put it through the way we had asked them to. And by the way, this quote of Martha Coakley's about it's not illegal to be illegal. I'm not here to defend Martha Coakley, but let's understand what she meant. What she meant is we don't have the power at the state level or the local level to arrest people who are here illegally. We don't get the opportunity to say, we're pulling you off the street and we're just sending you back. What she meant was, it's not illegal to be in Massachusetts just because you're illegal. We can't act on that. We can't take that person and pull them off the street. So we have to deal with the impacts, and that's what we've been trying to do in a very serious way by the legislation that we filed and that I filed in the House and in the Senate together and independently to try and address these issues. I've met with...
Time, John. Next question, please. Right here.
Good evening. My name is Mike Visconti. I'm a resident of Milford. I would like to ask this question to have both candidates talk to. If we consider the over $500 million wasted and lost on the mass healthcare system, the millions of dollars spent on fixing up the governor's office, and the failure of the state to release millions of dollars in funds to the local communities, can you explain to us any justification there might be in having an automatic tax increase on gasoline each year? Thank you.
Mark?
Well, I can tell you right now, I am vehemently against the automatic tax increase. I think it sets a precedent, and it's a really bad precedent. Our founding fathers said no taxation without representation. Our legislators need to be accountable for voting on tax increases on behalf of the people. If they want to increase taxes, they need to vote on it. And the gas tax is a horrible, horrible act that has been made upon us all. And I hope that we vote yes to repeal that on question 1 on November 4th.
John?
Sure. Mike, we have a 36 or $7 billion budget. There is fraud perpetrated upon our government by people who find new and improved ways to try and go after benefits that they don't deserve. And we have, in numerous pieces of legislation, increased penalties, expanded our fraud protection and investigative units. I filed and secured passage of a bill with Martha Coakley as Attorney General that addressed the self-referral in sober houses. You'd think, what are you talking about, John? But there was about $30 million potentially going out in that self-referral business that we've shut down. So certainly in a position where I recognize fraud is out there and we have to address it. In terms of the governor's office, the State House is a museum. It's an important historical building for us, and we need to take care of it and take care of all portions of it, and it costs money to do so. When I went in, there were pictures that were deteriorating on the wall, ancient, very significant photos. In terms of the gas tax, let me be really clear. We hadn't raised the gas tax since 1991, which is the year my daughter was born. My daughter graduated from college in 2013-14 and is out now working. We raised the gas tax. You can't go a generation in one of the most sensitive industries that there is to inflation and not do something. The inflation piece is going to mean about $5 per person per year. $5. And in terms of the vote, there was representation. We took the vote.
We have a question over here.
My question is for Mr. Reel. On the one hand, you're saying that you'll take a pledge not to raise taxes. On the other hand, you say that you will increase local aid. I wonder where the money will come from to increase local aid if you're not going to raise taxes.
Sure, I think, well, one thing is the state is not hurting for money. The argument that our state government does not have money is false. Our communities are struggling to pay for services. I believe that we should begin to move money from the state level and give it to our local communities where it's more accountable, it's more efficient, and it's closer to the people that pay taxes. And so, you know, we're not going to need to raise taxes to increase local aid. Look at the lottery. There was $75 million that the legislature could have opted to give to the communities like it's supposed to. They said no. They said 25 million only. It all should have gone to the communities. So that's just one example of where money is going into the state budget and not going to the communities. So there's money out there. It's a matter of getting a hold of it, seeing where we can cut a little bit and give to the communities, because the services that the communities can provide is the same as the state level, only, again, more accountable and more efficient.
John?
Where'd that question come from? It came from John Tehan. John, I've served in local government since I was 20 years old. That was a long time ago. I was elected as a town meeting member, served for 2 years, elected as a selectman when I was 22. I beat you, Mark, I think.
No, I was 20.
Oh,
21.
I was youngest at the time. Served for 3 years as a selectman. Went off to law school when I went nights and came back and served at the Blackstone Valley School Committee for 7 years and then the Milford School Committee for 9 years. I know what it means to be a local official in need of local aid from the state, and I understand what it means to try and do your part as a state official to get local aid. It's an imperative for me. It's important to me. There's only so much we can do in any year, and if somebody believes the state has all this money floating around, they haven't looked at the budget, they haven't looked at our revenue, they don't track what's going on month to month as we get our receipts and watch it go like this, so that we're trying to level a budget and we're seeing it go like that. When it comes to what happened this session, about how we cut off discussion, what we always wanted as local officials was to get numbers that we could rely on from the state early, whatever those numbers were going to be. Because we do our budgets in January and February, and we need them for our town meetings. But the state doesn't do its budget till June. So what happens is, we did a local aid resolution in March in which we said, here's what we're going to give you. And it was $25 million in more money and record level Chapter 70 numbers. And the community said, thank you very much for the increases, and thank you for allowing us to set our budgets early. There was an attempt to reopen that when we did the budget later in April, and we had all agreed we weren't going to do that. So why would you say we want to reopen the budget when you already said we're done?
Time, John. We have somebody down in front here, been waiting to get.
Yes, Mr. Reel, I'd like to know how you're going to vote on question 4 concerning sick leave and why.
I will be voting no on question 4 because as much as it's something that I think would be good for people in some cases, it's another mandate on our small businesses, which are struggling already. And so when I work at Southwick Zoo, I'm the assistant operations manager, and I think of the people that would be affected by that in our business and what the cost would be for a business. I'm not for increasing mandates on small business. You look at the amount of employees that are required under that, you only need 11 employees to be mandated under that proposal. So again, I would be voting no on question 4.
John?
Thank you. You know, this is probably the most difficult question of the ones that are on the ballot for me. It's been something that I've struggled with in the legislature for the last several years as the issue has come up because, look, I'm a small business person myself. I don't employ 11 or more people. I'm quite much smaller than that. But I understand. I represent a lot of small businesses. And my impression has been, through my representation of businesses over my 32 years as an attorney, and talking with businesses in the Chamber of Commerce, that most small businesses get it with their employees, and they enter into a relationship where when you need the time, you work it out. That's not to say that there aren't businesses out there that don't do that. So in the legislature, I have not supported moving forward with this proposal. I'm actually struggling with it because the more I hear the advocacy, the more I talk to people who have been caught up in it, the more I'm actually hearing struggles that people are having. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't decided how I'm voting on that bill yet, on that proposal yet. Because I'll tell you where my position has been, which has been a no. But I'm watching as I talk to people and hearing some stories that I haven't heard before. So I'm still evaluating that myself, as I suspect many of you are.
Next question, please. Please raise your hand high so our folks can find you. Over here, Peter. Oh, we got one in the back. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Jarrell, was it?
Real.
My bad. I'm sorry. If I remember correctly, I believe Milford has one of the highest illegal immigration populations in Massachusetts, and I want to know how you plan on making the state less for illegal immigration and what changes we're going to see as a community.
Sure. Well, I think the first step and the biggest step is to ensure that illegal immigrants are not receiving taxpayer-funded benefits. That's one of the biggest draws to illegal immigrants coming to our state. Another draw to coming to Massachusetts is the amount of jobs that are available for illegal immigrants. And we need to take some action on ensuring that businesses are not hiring illegal immigrants because it's not fair to them and it's not fair to the citizens of this state. So those are just a couple of examples in where we need to take action on that. I will never vote for anything that is going to make Massachusetts more of a magnet for illegal immigrants. I will always vote to protect the taxpayers, protect the residents.
John?
Mark and I agree that the focus ought to be on employers. I've said that for the last 8 years when I first ran. Because if we demonize the people, we miss the opportunity to say why they're here. We are consumers. We are the ones that make the judgment about what we buy, where we buy, who we hire, and whether we're working with legitimate businesses. Because whether it's an illegal immigrant population or whether it's just an underground economy, and we've actually got and have passed, shortly after I got in, a task force on the underground economy, we need to enforce our laws relative to employment. And if we do, we will see that there will be changes in the demographics because people come here to work. But we as consumers have the obligation to look around and recognize who we're patronizing as employers and whether we're taking the time when we hire somebody to work on our house to make sure they can present the proper workers' compensation information and the other kind of documentation. I filed legislation to require employers to participate in the E-Verify program. I filed it with Senator Moore. I filed it individually. I filed it as part of a comprehensive package. I filed it as a single piece of legislation because I believe it's our best weapon against illegals populating our communities. But we're no more a magnet than any other state, by the way. Let's not get caught up in that. We are no more a magnet than any other state. We don't offer benefits that others don't. In fact, we're doing a pretty good job of requiring Social Security numbers where we can. You can't cut off the biggest benefit cost, which is education. It's not allowable under federal law.
Next question. Down front here, John.
My question is for Mr. Reel. Besides illegal immigration, what are some of the other reforms you would like to see?
Well, I think that our welfare system, I mean, like I said, we have the taxpayers are flipping the bill for $9.5, probably more, but according to the state audit, $9.5 million in fraud. A little over $5 million of that 9.5 is associated with the Mass Health Program. A little over $2 million of that is associated with the food stamp program, and the remainder of that is mostly with cash aid. So my goal, if you're all willing to vote for me, and I hope you do, on November 4th, is to protect the taxpayers. This state does not do enough and does not have it in their minds when they're voting to protect the taxpayers. So that's my goal, and again, that's one of those issues I would address.
We've passed 3 welfare reform bills. We've put fraud investigators into the agencies. We put an inspector general into Health and Human Services to try and address fraud. Like I said before, for every step we take to try and eliminate fraud, there's somebody who finds a new and improved way to go after it. And we're going to keep going after that kind of fraud. I assure you. We have to get certain costs under control. We were talking about what kind of money is available before. 55% of our budget goes to health, care, and human service programs. When you add in education, about 75% of our budget is taken up. And when you add in fixed costs, we're up to about 85%. So we're working with short numbers. So what we've tried to do, recessions offer opportunities. And what we've tried to do over the last 5 and 6 years, as we've dealt with the impacts of the recession, is to do reform. We did transportation reform that saved about $500 million by collapsing agencies, going to the accelerated bridge program, taking on challenges like that. And we're trying to reform the human service agencies in the same way, because we saw what happened at DCF. We've got to reform that. And we've put in place reforms that are taking hold. And I've sat on a kitchen cabinet advising the leadership over there as whether we see that they're implementing those reforms appropriately. But those are the kinds of things we continue to do. They're all over state government that we're looking for opportunities to reform.
Okay, we have a little under 15 minutes left, so get your hands up.
Hello? Okay, there we go. This question is for Representative Fernandez. In 2008, question 1 on the ballot was to repeal the state tax, income tax, and that was never taken up by the legislature. In this election, there's a ballot question, question 1, about repealing the gas tax. If that question is voted in the positive, will you support that as part of the legislature and make sure that it gets taken up?
The repeal of the inflation piece of the gas tax? If it's decided by the voters to do that, would I support it?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely.
So unlike in 2008 when you didn't support repealing the support repealing the income tax, the repeal of income tax, you will support this?
I honestly don't remember the question 1 in 2008. I'm not trying to avoid you. I seriously and honestly don't remember it, and that I didn't do something that I should have done. So I'll be happy to go back and take a look at it, but I don't remember if it did. In fact, if the people voted to repeal the income tax altogether. Is that what you're saying? Well, we have tied a reduction in the income tax to revenue, and it just did go down by a tick, and it's coming down from where it was. So there is a process in place that we'll get back to the 5% if that's what you're talking about.
Next question. Back here and back here. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Fernandez, you mentioned requiring E-Verify for all businesses in Massachusetts. I'm hearing a lot about policing and looking for fraud and other auditing procedures that cost a lot of money. How would E-Verify, even if required, how would we police that to ensure businesses are, particularly when you're talking small businesses, construction firms, things like that, police that to ensure that they're actually leveraging it?
There's a process in place in which E-Verify is immediately utilized online, and there are audits that are conducted on businesses that are conducted for compliance with workers' compensation laws, health insurance laws, and others, and I am comfortable that we would be, if implementing, doing that in the same way to assure validation, because employers would have to immediately indicate compliance. Now, whether we do it for the one-person business or 25 or greater, I'm willing to discuss that. But one of the problems we have on this issue in the legislature is the slippery slope mentality. People won't even come and discuss things sometimes because they don't want to come off the slope. I've come off the slope. I've been willing to talk with people about different issues. And when you talk about magnets, when I was in a meeting with the Republican leadership when the unaccompanied children's issue was coming up, in that meeting was the mayor of Lynn. Now, she's got a problem. She's got a problem with hundreds of people showing up in her school system. We need to get a handle on it. And I still think targeting the wrongful employment is the absolute way for us to get a hold of this issue. So whether it's E-Verify, some modification of it, or something else, it's how we got to do it.
Mark, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I would just say that, I am also leaning towards E-Verify. I think the system now is not quite working because it's a self-check system with the I-9 forms that go in the drawer, and unless someone comes to check and take a look at them, no one's looking at them. So E-Verify is a step towards having a system where it's going to be verified. The problem is that some businesses that don't check that now anyway, it's a good chance they're not going to put anything in the system. So that's where I think we need to focus in on, is how are we going to address the businesses that are failing to check identifications. And like I said, if we do implement an E-Verify system, the same businesses that aren't checking now, how do we know they're going to check with that?
Next question, please.
Yes.
Can you please explain to me how you feel that the state of Massachusetts is not an illegal magnet with all that Governor Patrick has given out to these illegals since they've been here? Healthcare, free housing. I mean, they drive illegally. They do whatever they want. I read where you thought that they're here to work. I disagree.
Well, you know, it's all right for us to disagree. You've lived with the issue on a very personal level, and I've lived with the issue on behalf of my community, my area, and the state. Governor Patrick has talked about doing things, but he hasn't been able to implement a lot of things on his own. You know, we passed the ex-registration piece, and if implemented the way we intended it to be, there'd be a lot fewer people driving illegally on the roads. You know that he tried to pass the driver legislation. You know that I took a stand very strongly against that and was successful in committee in defeating it. There are certain benefits. We've passed the Social Security requirement for EBT and for DTA benefits. People aren't getting into our public housing because we actually have on our books, by the way, legislation that says you have to be a U.S. citizen to live in public housing. It was ruled unconstitutional. So it's still on the books, but we can't enforce it. But as a consequence, we require quarries. In order to get a quarry, you got to have a Social Security number. So that's why you don't see a lot of illegals living in our public housing, as that issue was raised by some. It's a phony issue. It's not happening. But I don't think we're any more of a magnet than states that have passed driver's licenses, that are handing out benefits. We can't shut off education, which is our biggest cost, and we have to be careful with health care, because it's one of those Hobson's choices that we have to make in life, where if we don't try to do something preventive, then people who don't have insurance, legal or illegal, end up in our hospitals, costing us a whole lot more money to treat them, because we're not turning anybody away from a hospital who's ill or injured. So we're not offering, I don't think, anything more than some of these other states that have gone well beyond where we are. Some states that people would say are Republican states, like Texas.
Mark?
Yeah, I would just say that we talk about, well, other states aren't doing it, so why should Massachusetts? Or Massachusetts is no different than other states. Well, we need to take some action. And we need to be a leader in the country and work very hard to end this atrocity. Their lives have been taken by illegal immigrants. They're not supposed to be here. That's the bottom line. They've broken our laws. Are we going to take action on people who have broken the law? When you or me, if we do something wrong, we're arrested and we go to court and we go through the process. But people who have broken federal law come to Massachusetts and get away with way too much.
Can I just say one other thing about that? I would love to get control of the number of people coming into our communities. It is a federal issue. We are not going to impact that with state legislation. We're not. And by the way, if you want to know, if you got some doubt about whether I'm taking a serious stand on illegal immigration, reach out to MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigration and Refugee Group. When the chairman of the judiciary resigned to go become corporate counsel to Marty Walsh when he was elected mayor, They were so afraid that I was going to get that chairmanship midterm that they went to leadership and tried to block me from getting it because of the positions I've taken on the impacts of illegal immigration. So people can posture all they want with their mailers and everything else about where we stand, but talk to the people who actually are living this and see where they are.
Can I say something else just because you
No,
had twice?
we need to go to the next question.
Okay.
Hi, I was just wondering what your position on ballot question 2 was.
Those people?
It's for both of us or one of us?
Yes, that's for both candidates.
Mark, you go ahead.
Ballot question 2 is the deposit, expanding the bottle deposits. I am against expanding the bottle deposits because it's a hidden tax. We're going to, you know, the argument is we're going to change people's habits and therefore people will recycle. Well, I can tell you, it would be great if that was the case. But there's bottle deposits on beer cans and various other things, and you find an awful lot of that on the side of the road. So people who are who are going to throw trash out their window are not going to change their habits because they're paying a little more and really not noticing that in the first place. It's also another one of those things that are tied so that they can increase that without voting on it. So I'm opposed to it. I'm voting no.
John?
Yeah, this is actually an issue upon which my position has changed over the course of time. I was against expansion of the bottle bill. I actually was dear friends with Lois Pines, who you might know is sort of the mother of the bottle bill, when she was in the Senate. And I had worked for her. She ran for lieutenant governor. I was working her campaign. She wasn't successful, but I learned a lot about that issue working for her. But in terms of expansion, I wasn't in favor of it. I thought we were getting a handle on it with recycling. But my attitude has matured on that issue, and it really grows out of something that the Board of Selectmen in Milford and Senator Moore and myself and Richie Neal worked on with state officials, which was the saving of the bottle plant down here in Milford, the last bottling plant, manufacturing plant in New England, actually probably on a great deal of the East Coast. I found people down there that were in favor of it because they rely an awful lot on materials that are recycled. And the truth of the matter is the numbers are there. They show us that with the deposit, we get a higher rate of return of bottles. We are absolutely burying ourselves in plastic, and I wish I could say that recycling is having the impact that we want it to have. It's just not. The numbers just don't tell us that. And we've got to get our hands around it. It costs us money to get rid of that material through our landfill processes or through whatever process we go to recycle that stuff out. We're spending an awful lot of money doing that. And so there's an opportunity here, and I hope that ultimately we'll get to the point where we don't need it anymore and the recycling works. And by the way, it's not a hidden tax. It's right out there in front of you. If you don't return it, it's going to the state. But at least with this, it's going to be used for recycling programs and the like. So I've matured to the point of saying that I actually am voting for that.
Okay, we are out of time on the representative race. So we thank you, John. We thank you, Mark. And especially thank you out in the audience for your participation. What we'd like to do now is take just a couple of minutes, and I mean just a couple of minutes, to stretch a little bit, talk to your neighbors, chat about it, and get your questions ready for the Senate race.
He forgot to close it. He forgot to close it. Sorry, Senator, what was that? Yeah, we got it, Dick. I'd like to ask everyone to please take your seats so we can continue. Just got to get through it. I'd like to introduce the two candidates for State Senate for the Worcester-Norfolk District, which is comprised of 14 towns that go all the way from Milford at one end, all the way through to Southbridge at the other. To my left is incumbent State Senator Richard Moore, a 20-year incumbent, and his challenger is State Representative Ryan Fatman from Sutton and surrounding towns. Senator Moore has won the coin toss, and he's elected to go second with his opening statement. So Ryan Fatman will begin.
Good evening. Let me begin by thanking the citizens of Milford for putting on this candidates forum. I also want to thank Senator Moore for his service. I was friendly with Senator Moore before this campaign began, and I'll be friendly with him after. We are both running competitive campaigns, and it's because we care both very deeply about our state, the people we serve, and the issues that are at stake. And I respect his service. But while Senator Moore and I have worked together to pass local legislation to help our communities succeed, we disagree on many of the big issues of today, like the automatic gas tax. He voted for it. I voted against it. Requiring a social security number for public benefits. I voted for it. He voted against it twice. Putting a photo ID on the EBT card. I voted for it. He voted against it. And since I announced my candidacy for the state Senate, Senator Moore has changed his position, starting to vote for these reforms. This shows that the competition of ideas works and that we need new ideas in principled positions in the state Senate. Since I launched my campaign for the state Senate, I've knocked on thousands of doors and met hundreds of hardworking people looking for change. It's been my honor to serve as a state representative. I was elected in 2010, re-elected in 2012. Haven't been around long, but long enough to know things need to change in our state. People watch their state senator raise their gas tax automatically, making it more expensive for them to go to work. Yet he gets paid to drive to work, nearly $40 a day, a perk he voted to double. This is supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. But too often, our politicians seem above the people, and that's not right. My belief has been to go to the people, to listen to them at their doorsteps, and to let them know that I care about their family and their future. People want Massachusetts to be affordable, and they want their elected officials to be held accountable. And they want fairness, too. When they see the welfare system used for things like alcohol, tobacco products, lottery tickets, they know that's not welfare. That's unfair. Unfair to every hardworking person I've met on the campaign trail. It's also unfair to the people who need the help, too. I've met dozens of new American citizens who saved every penny they had and waited 10 years to become a legal U.S. citizen. Going door to door, I hear their stories, and they are right to be upset about people who come to Massachusetts and get access to welfare, housing, health care, without being lawful Massachusetts residents. I believe we're at a defining moment in this state's history. Senator Moore's campaign has been to tell you he's good at playing that same old Beacon Hill game. Tonight, I'm here to tell you, if you vote for me, I'll change it.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. I'm going to ask you again to please hold your applause till the end of the debate so we can be fair to both sides. Okay?
Although you can applaud for me in equal measure.
That's one exception I guess we have to make. Senator Moore.
Thank you, John. And I want to thank the citizens of Milford for sponsoring this debate, and also thank those who are here tonight and those who are home that will be watching this on television. I'm proud to say that I was born in Milford, in what has become one of the finest community hospitals and a major local employer. And I was raised and educated in the local public schools next door in Hopedale. My working class parents weren't political, but they instilled in me the importance of helping our neighbors and our community. That's been my goal professionally as a college administrator and teacher, and in politics as a Hopedale selectman, state representative, federal administrator, and state senator. I'm proud of my record serving all of you, and often working in a bipartisan fashion to get real reform that helped our region of the state. I've gained knowledge and experience in the trust of my colleagues and constituents, and used it not for enhancing my personal career, but to help individuals, families, and towns that I have the honor to serve. I've sponsored many bills that have become law that help the people of our state, and I've succeeded in obtaining funding for local projects like the restoration of Milford Pond, the support for the Youth Center, and other projects in each town of the district. A complete list can be found actually on my campaign website, www.moreforsenate.com. My outstanding staff and I have helped hundreds, maybe thousands of individuals or families cut through the bureaucracy of state government. In the thousands of votes that I've cast on behalf of the people of this region, I'm sure anyone could pick out a few with which they disagree. Even my wife, Joanne, doesn't agree with every vote I make. But she knows that I think through each one and have a good reason for how I voted, not simply for political posturing, but what I believe is best for the district. But don't just take my word for that. Let me read a letter I received this week, and I quote, "I'm pleased to endorse my good friend Dick Moore for re-election to the Massachusetts Senate. Dick is possessed of enormous common sense, and as governor, I appreciated the fact that he never let politics get in the way of a good idea. We would not have gotten so much done on Beacon Hill in the 1990s without the help of conservative Democrats like Dick Moore, who in my experience was always willing to roll up his sleeves to get the job done and was not afraid to work on a bipartisan basis." Signed by Bill Weld. I look forward to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, Senator Moore. We will now move towards the challenge portion of the debate, where the candidates will ask each other questions. We will move, Ryan Fatman will ask the first question of his challenger.
Thank you. Senator Moore, when you ran for re-election in 2012, with this flyer, you stated, "I don't support raising taxes, that government has to live within its means, that tax increases hurt the businesses in your district." Less than 7 months later, you voted to raise taxes by $500 million on gas, technology services, and sales. What's changed?
What's changed is the economy. More people are unemployed. We need to create jobs. Highway Fund creates jobs, and a great example is in your district and mine, in the town of Sutton, where a highway project, which was in the making for a number of years, former Representative Jennifer Callahan and I went to the administration and got that project moving. That project now is well under construction, and because it is, a major developer is also now building a price chopper market and other stores that will provide some tax revenue to Sutton and jobs for people in the area. So jobs are what's really the primary focus on anything we do. We need to get people back to work and working at good-paying jobs.
Representative Fatman, you have 1 minute.
I don't understand the concept of how raising taxes by $500 million helps job creation. And I would also say that the tech tax actually instigated a movement of the business community to repeal that very tax. Had we taken the time as a legislature to actually go through the process and taken 7 days to observe what was in this tax package, as opposed to just ramming it down people's throats, we probably wouldn't have hurt the technology sector, which many jobs left because of it, or threatened to leave. One job in particular, small business in Marlborough, left Massachusetts and went down to Rhode Island, because Rhode Island was offering tax incentives for the same thing. Short period of time, jobs gone.
Question from Senator Moore.
Right, in the first 4 years that I served in the Massachusetts House, I helped to lead the effort to create the Blackstone River and Canal Heritage State Park. I worked with the Department of Transportation to straighten out a dangerous section of road in Millville, known as Dead Man's Curve. I led the effort to have Route 146 reconstructed at a time when it was known as the Killer Highway and changed into a much safer road. Serving as your senator, to me, is about having a vision of what I can do to help this region and our Commonwealth become even better. What have you done in your time in office that has directly helped the people of the districts you serve?
Well, Senator Moore, I appreciate the question. One of the things I've done is work directly with you to file legislation on the local level, whether it be for liquor licenses or land takings, and both of those have helped create jobs. We just recently passed a bill in Webster for 5 liquor licenses, which they expect is probably going to create 100 jobs down in the downtown area, putting people back to work at restaurants, putting people back to work actually at Atlas Box. When we took that land taking, we expanded the opportunity for that business to grow. And so I've been happy to work with you on that and help shepherd things through the House. You have made the comment that I have never passed a piece of legislation. And I've always been confused about that because of this letter that you wrote me on November 2nd, 2002, congratulating me on passing my very first amendment, which was the day that I gave my first speech in the House of Representatives. That was right here. This bill passed as law, and I was behind it.
Senator Moore?
Well, I didn't know you were in the legislature in 2002, but nevertheless, the bills that you cite are bills that I'm the co-sponsor, in many cases the lead sponsor. I wanted to know what you've done, not what you've done because of on my coattails. What have you done on your own?
Question from Representative Fatman.
Senator Moore, on a recent interview, in response to my criticisms for you voting against a valid Social Security number for taxpayer-funded benefits, you said, and I quote, "I voted the right way when it mattered." Shouldn't every vote matter?
No, not when votes are cast or offered as political posturing and amendments to a bill, to a budget bill, that really had no money behind them in order to enforce it. We talked earlier in the House debate about the need to be able to enforce what gets passed. Those amendments, the 2 amendments that dealt with the welfare reform, would have undermined the effort for comprehensive reform that was on the schedule for 2 weeks from that debate. That we needed, and I think you agree, comprehensive welfare reform, not nitpicking and getting a piece here, a piece there, which would have weakened the initiative, weakened the effort to get a passage of welfare reform, which did pass, which included photos on EBT cards, which included Social Security numbers for an application of benefits. And so I voted for it when it passed as the bill that we all wanted, not as a piecemeal attempt to try to undermine what would have been the effort to really make significant reform in this system.
Representative Fatman.
If we had taken the piecemeal approach and passed common sense reforms to require a Social Security number in 2013, we probably wouldn't have wasted $50 million of taxpayer money sending out registrations to dead people. I mean, this has been happening across the Commonwealth, and it's been a tremendous waste of resources. Putting a photo ID shouldn't wait for a comprehensive bill. It's common sense, and it should become law immediately. I'm happy that I supported the comprehensive package as well. I'm glad you did. But my God, how long do we have to wait for common sense to become law in this state? It is a Commonwealth. There should be common sense.
Question from Senator Moore.
Well, of course, the common sense was initiated by Governor Romney when he chose not to fund the photos on IBBT cards. I worked to improve the health and safety of our children requiring medical emergency response plans in all our schools, leading the effort in the budget to add $250,000 for matching grants for automatic external defibrillators, AEDs, to revive victims of heart failure, and expanding school health funding. What have you done to make the lives of our children safer in our schools?
On November 15th, 2010, shortly after I got elected, there was a young man named Michael Elsesser who passed away in a football game. And it was devastating to the Sutton community. My brother was friends with him. And we worked together, bipartisan, to try to make sure that that bill got passed. Now, that bill had been filed 8 years previous to me getting there. But it passed within my first year. And that's because I brought people together, including Senator Moore. I brought 200 students into the State House, some from this community, who remembered watching their own classmate, Tyler Symes, get hit with a hockey puck in the chest and be saved because of those AEDs. And so we worked together, knocking on doors of legislators with 200 students from Sutton High and BVT and Milford to make sure that this bill passed. And when it got stopped in the House, I sat with the Elsesser family and I sat with Speaker DeLeo and made sure that within a week that bill passed. That's what I've done.
Well, you give yourself a lot of credit. It's actually the tragedy of Michael Elsesser and Tyler Symes that initiated the effort to pass that bill. It happened to be after your election that Michael passed away and that Tyler was seriously injured. It was because of their tragedy, not because of anything you did, to get that bill passed. We didn't work together. You were out having rallies on your own, while I was working with the sponsor of the bill, Senator Montigny, to perfect the bill, and I offered the amendment that formalized the bill in the right way, to make sure we'd also have the school department enforcing it as well, and make sure that these reports were done. I voted for it. I was a co-sponsor of the bill with Senator Montigny, and that's where I got through. I was looking for what you really did on your own, not always on my coattails.
Next question from Representative Fatman.
Senator Moore, how can you empathize with the average voter whose gas tax you voted to raise forever when you collect nearly $40 a day to drive to work, lease your car in your campaign for almost $17,000 a year for the last 12 years, and you get to write off 55 cents on every mile you drive throughout the district, whether to Boston or event, due to the IRS tax code?
Well, first of all, apparently the brochure you sent out was a lie, that I received $100. That's what the brochure that was sent out to support you by the Republican State Committee. So either they have fuzzy math or you lied in the brochure. It clearly is less than that. You know that by just looking at the law as to who can do it. The person that gets $100 a day is one of your Republican colleagues who's from Nantucket. He can either get there by swimming or he can take the ferry, but he needs some assistance. I guess if it's wrong, Scott Brown was wrong in taking it, $37,000 during his time. I guess Karen Polito, your leading running mate for the second spot on the state ticket, she took $34,000 during her years in the House of Representatives. I don't think it's wrong. The federal tax code actually allows for a tax credit for commuters, that businesses, and I believe Waters, which one of your supporters works for, provides that commuting benefit. It's one of the businesses that does it, and that's considered good business practice to provide that. But I also drive to work around the district, to meetings. I attend a lot of meetings with local officials. I attend functions where I'm invited, and I don't get any reimbursement for that. So the actual reimbursement, or it's not even a reimbursement because it's a flat amount, is minuscule compared to the amount of driving that I have to do in 14 towns. It's easier if you only represent 3.5 towns, but when you represent 14, and it takes over an hour and a half to get from one end to the other, there's a lot of local driving involved to get to the meetings, to do the job of being a senator, and to be able to represent the people and know what they're thinking and know what they want, and I take that time to do it.
Representative Fatman.
First of all, my Republican colleagues are wrong, and people can expect me to stand up when I think my Republican colleagues are wrong as a state senator. Second, No one lied about how much per diems you take. It says Senator Richard Moore voted to double this political perk to $100 a day when it was previously $50 per day. That means you doubled your own to around $40 a day. I don't know the exact number because I don't take it. I promised I never would, I never have, and if I ever do, you shouldn't vote for me. Because this has to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people, not above the people. And I think when we drive politicians to work on the taxpayer's dime, that's above the people, and that makes lawmakers out of touch with the people that they represent.
Okay. Final question from Senator Moore.
I've worked to bring education and training opportunities to our region, leading the effort to bring Quinsigamond Community College to Southbridge on the former American Optical campus, and obtain seed money to begin the establishment of an Advanced Manufacturing Technology Center in that town, as well as a branch of Quinsigamond in the Blackstone Valley. I've allocated funding and advocated funding to expand the advanced placement programs in our schools, including the Sutton High School. I've also worked to increase local aid by voting for it, not simply advocating, but voting for it. What have you done to expand educational opportunities in this district?
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, I have voted for increases in local aid. In fact, I'm the only candidate who's never voted to cut local aid standing before you. I did vote against the budget, and that's what you're referring to, but we can get into that later tonight. One of the things I've helped with is making sure that people do have educational opportunities, and we fund local communities. And so one of the first initiatives that I worked on with my Republican colleagues was to get reversion money, an amendment through the budget, $65 million, which meant about $185,000 for the town of Milford, and for my current district, $369,422. And so that was after years and years of you cutting local aid. In fact, we're still down by local aid in this town alone by over $1 million, about $1,085,421. This town has not received and needs to be made whole. So I have made it as a former selectman who served 2 terms in the town of Sutton, who had to make tough budget decisions as you guys cut our local aid and lay off teachers and lay off firefighters and hear their stories and see the consequences. I made that my #1 priority on Beacon Hill. And that's one of the things I worked with George Peterson on, the minority leader, and that's something I will always work on in a team effort, whether it be with Republicans or Democrats.
Senator Moore.
Well, that's fine to be saying that, and you can talk a great game, but when you don't vote for the budget that includes that increase in local aid, significant increases this year and last year when you both also voted against the budget, that doesn't explain, you can say, I'm going to give you a check, but then you don't sign it, and then it's not cashed at the bank. You either are for it or you're not. You should be consistent with that, and you should be voting for the budget because that's the vote that counts when you finally deliver the local aid. It's all well and good to go out there and tell the community you're doing this or doing that. I voted for the $65 million addition as well in the Senate.
I know, but it didn't pass the Senate.
It passed in conference, and that's where you talk to the conferees. If you know how to work with the rest of the body in the Senate and working with the House conferees, that's how you get something done. We advocated passing that and asked our conferees to recede from their position and agree with the House position. That's why I voted for it, and that's why I voted for the final bill, the final budget that included that. You didn't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I did. Thank you from both candidates, and we will now move to the citizen participation portion of the debate. Please raise your hand, and we'll have one of our assistants come over and bring the microphone to you. Let's start right here.
Thank you, everybody, for this meeting. Senator Moore, thank you for your 40-something years of service for the community. The question I have is, it seems that the majority of people, voters in Massachusetts, think we are heading in the wrong direction in many areas. And when I think that 52% of us are independents or unenrolled, and then I think of the one-party rule on Beacon Hill, what do you think you could do to change the direction in a one-party rule if you are elected again?
Well, it depends on who the governor is, and we've had 16 years of Republican governors. I don't call that one-party rule. The governor has significant authority. So it's only been the last 8 years that you can even say that. But it isn't even one-party rule there. The Republican members of the House and Senate, at least in the Senate, are included in the discussions and the debate. We do a lot of things bipartisan, almost always, in many cases, unanimous or very close to that. Working with my colleagues across the aisle. I have a great relationship with the Republican floor leader in the Senate, and we get a lot of things done. I think the question of one-party rule is not the issue. The question is, how do we do it, and what are we doing? And I think that on many things that I've supported, we're going in the right direction. I'm not always voting with my own leadership, with the Senate President. Sometimes a little frustrating to her. But when I don't think the district is being well served, I don't vote one party. I vote with what I think is right for the district, and I work with, and the record shows that I frequently am voting with the Republican members of the Senate on some issues that I think are important to this district.
Representative Fatman.
Thank you for the question. The record also shows, according to the Senate Clerk's office, that Senator Moore has voted in the last 4 years 90% of the time with his party's leadership. So when you're voting with the Republicans, it's not too often. Secondly, he mentioned political posturing and filing amendments that are common sense, like requiring a Social Security number to sign up for public benefits or putting a photo ID on the EBT card. It's Republicans that have brought forward these issues and created awareness about all the money and the fraud and the waste and the abuse. That's something that I think balance brings. And I think that you're right. We need a Republican governor to restore balance in this state. That's why I'm supporting Charlie Baker. And don't really understand why you're supporting Martha Coakley. But at the same time, I've always been willing to reach across party lines and make sure that we achieve success. You have to as a Republican because there's so many Democrats, and that's fine. My mom's a Democrat. My dad's a Republican. I said my mom had good ideas. My dad knew how to pay for them. And to me, that's the approach you'll be able to take when I go to the state Senate.
Next question. Right over here.
Thank you, Representative Fatman and Senator Moore, for your service. A lot of talk is about supporting local government. My question is this. On the matter of the proposed correctional facility in Webster, are you supporting the opposition that's being presented by the elected leaders and the citizens of that town, or are you siding with the Republican sheriff of Worcester County? I'd like Representative Fatman to take that on first. I'm looking forward to a bipartisan approach on this from both of you. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Art. We talked about why I voted against the budget. This is the reason. I voted for the House budget because it had some of my own amendments in there that would help my local communities. Then it went to the Senate. Senator Moore filed a $497,000 budget item. It was for a corrections center in the town of Webster. It came to conference committee. The final budget had it in there. I voted against it for that reason. I live in the town of Webster. The town of Webster does not need more community correction centers. It needs more police on the streets. It needs more programs to get people back to work. I'm siding with my vote that I took against the budget for that reason. I knew it was wrong then. I know it's wrong now. I live in the town of Webster, 1 mile away from that spot. Every day when I drive home from work or from the campaign trail, I see the people who are walking on the streets, and they sometimes are not safe people. There's dangerous people in the town of Webster. We have 58 registered sex offenders, and it's ranked the 3rd most dangerous community in central Massachusetts. There's a lot of things that need to change, and that's why I voted against it. I side with my budget vote.
Senator Moore.
Well, I'm happy to have your support against the sheriff in this effort. The sheriff came to me and asked for funding. He asked for that amount of money in order to provide some assistance for drug addicts to try to get them on the right track. Then he changed his rule, or at least he didn't tell the community the proper story up front, changed what he was planning to do. When he actually, at a meeting of the local committee that's to try to deal with drug abuse, said that what he would do is that he was going to have a request for proposals throughout southern Worcester County to see where that should be located. And that he would have community information programs to explain to wherever the communities were where a treatment center might be located. We found out after the meeting, after he had told us that he in fact was looking to reopen the center in Webster, and that the formula he was using, or the system he was using, was a community correction center, not what the community had been told that he wanted, nor what I had been told that he wanted. And so I've told him that that's unacceptable, that he needs to look at the whole area as to where the drug issues are, what kind of people are going to be using the center if there is one, and what kind of people are going to be there to provide security. He intends to go forward with it. Well, I have blocked that so far from happening, and I would expect in the next budget, if I'm the senator, I will make sure that he doesn't get the funding to do anything more.
Next question.
Bill Bissonette from Bellingham. By the way, that's the last town in the senatorial district. I'm a former chairman of the Finance Committee and chairman of the Board of Selectmen. So two issues that I've always been interested in is constituency services and what type of leadership and sponsoring bills have you, and I know Ryan was our representative for a short time till the redistricting, and Senator Moore has been our senator for a while. But my thing is, how much constituency services, how many times do you make it to the towns, and what legislation have you sponsored? And the question is for both Mr. Fatman and Mr. Moore.
Let's start with Senator Moore.
Well, I'm clearly in Bellingham on at least a weekly basis, and it's not for campaign purposes. It's to meet with local officials, meet with constituents, whether it's for a coffee hour or office hours or meetings that they request that I do. And we have supported Bellingham in a number of areas there, not only with local bills that the town meeting requests, but also with some of the issues in the transportation bond where there's a major construction project that they would like to see go forward. That will provide a northbound ramp on Route 495, which will help to alleviate some of the traffic issues on the 126 495 interchange, to broaden that interchange, make a wider bridge similar to what is down 140 on Franklin, working with the selectmen there and working with the town administrator, working with the school committee on the issues that they present to me for the people in Bellingham. So I'm there on a very regular basis. And it's not just at campaign time, it's throughout the years of the term, and not just this term, but a number of terms now that I've been working with the people in Bellingham.
Representative Fatman.
Thank you very much for the question, Bill. And I will say that I am quite sad about losing the town of Bellingham in redistricting, and I'm trying to get it back. I've knocked on doors since 2010, and the thing is, I never stopped. I went back to the people that I asked for their vote for and said, these are some of the things I'm working on, and I'd like to get your opinion. There was a young girl in the town of Bellingham, Katie Dickinson, and I knocked on her door, and actually the Milford Daily News wrote a whole article about this. Young, 13-year-old girl said, my opinion matters. And I said, you're right, and if I win, I'm going to come back to you and your family, and I'm going to file a bill on your behalf, a study. Didn't want to do the full reins of the bill that she wanted to do, because what she was saying at the dinner table with her parents was that she was upset by people who get access to welfare but don't have to work, and that she thought it was a good idea that you have to have community service as part of the contract for getting that. And so I sat down with her after I won the election, and we filed that bill. And we had her come in, and we had her talk about these issues. Another thing, I knocked on doors in the town of Webster, where I live. I did it during the budget season. I asked people what they wanted me to file on their behalf. Talk to the local leaders, talk to the leaders of organizations, talk to regular people who don't really get involved in those things. And when I told them about a correction center that Senator Moore had filed as a budget line item, they were adamantly against it. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to vote against the budget. Because overall, there were some good things in there. But the town where I lived and the town that was impacted most, they didn't want it. And I knew that. And on regards to the sheriff, I think he has some interesting emails that he's going to release at some point that really tell the true story about that. Because he told me that when the town of Webster had this community correction center proposed, it was you who first reached out to him, not the other way around.
Next question, please. In the front.
In the last U.S. Census in Milford, Massachusetts, it was determined that 1/3, 10,000 immigrants were in my hometown. We spent a lot of time this evening talking about illegal immigration. Let's make it clear what the issue is. The President of the United States has opened the borders. Governor Patrick and the legislature has supported the President and housed illegal immigrants, invited them here by the busload to be housed at Camp Edwards and around this Commonwealth. It's coming. A taxpayer group analyzed the Massachusetts welfare benefits and the benefits around the United States. Massachusetts has the highest welfare benefits in the continental United States, worth $50,000 per person. I would ask you, isn't that why illegal immigrants are coming to Massachusetts in droves? Because our politicians have invited them here. Would you comment on my remarks?
Senator Moore, let's start with you on that one.
Well, first of all, I don't know where you heard that the legislature joined with the governor in that request or invitation, because it just simply is not true. The legislature did not vote for that. The governor did it under his executive authority, offered two bases that, as Commander-in-Chief of the National Guard, he is able to do. He did not consult the legislative leadership, let alone the legislature as a whole. I don't know where you've got the figure in the Milford census, because they wouldn't know who was an illegal alien. They wouldn't be taking that kind of information. There might be that many immigrants, and there are a lot of people in Milford who are the descendants of immigrants, certainly, and some that are recent immigrants, but they're here legally, too. There are some illegal aliens, too, but I don't think they show up on the census tract. We're not any more attractive than many other states in the United States to people from other countries. And I think Representative Fernandez talked about it earlier in the previous debate, and that was because of the economy. People are coming here to look for jobs and send money back to their homeland, wherever that may be. And I think one of the areas that we need to look at in order to try to get that under control is to look at the check cashing areas of businesses that exist, because that's where the money flows through, and that people are collecting, whether it's under the table or legally, goes through that process, and we need to take a look at that to see if we can't identify some of this underground economy and begin to deal with the employers who are illegally hiring people and attracting them here. So they're not working, for the best of my knowledge, for the state. They might be under contract sometimes with the state. I can remember a few years back that I turned on the 11 o'clock news and they were bringing the custodial staff out of the building with immigration. I think that's been changed since then, a number of years ago. But I don't see that, and I've not heard from anyone that can document it, that it is in fact a magnet.
Representative Fatman.
Thank you very much for the question. And as you're probably aware, I've made this a very important issue in my campaign. The reason is, when I knock on people's doors, it's what they talk about. And it's also something that I believe is a problem personally. These problems didn't happen overnight. They happened over the course of the last 44 years. Massachusetts has put in place policies that incentivize illegal immigration. And that's not fair to a whole heck of a lot of people. One of those policies is not requiring a social security number to get access to certain benefits. Now, we do for welfare, we don't for housing, we can do better. I also think that this problem breaks down on a fairness to the people who choose to come here the right way. I've met plenty of them. Georgina, who lives in this town on Diana Circle, She came here with her entire family. It took 20 years. She left her family for a better opportunity in this country, in this state. It is not fair to her to give opportunities for people who don't follow the law. It's also not fair to the people who, are working taxpayers and see that money abused and get frustrated with it, sometimes even angry. But I go back to Georgina because 20 years is a very long time. And then I think of Rosalina, another woman who I met who lost her job because somebody was able to undercut the market and get paid below her $10 an hour job. They didn't have to record it. They gave the immigrant $7 an hour, $6 an hour. We don't know. And that to me is what is the crux of this problem. It's also not fair to a lot of the illegal immigrants. And let me explain that statement. There are illegal immigrants here who are not seen, not heard, who have violence committed upon them and are not comfortable going to the police. We need to solve this problem because that's a humanitarian issue as well. I think we need to make sure that our policies in Massachusetts reflect those of other states. Arizona.
Thank you, Ryan, Fat Man. Thank you. Next question.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum. My name is Ann Donovan, and I'm a resident of Milford. And my question is for Senator Moore. Senator, in your opening statement, you mentioned that you have a good reason for every vote that you made. Can you please provide the audience with your top 2 reasons why you voted in favor of the gas tax twice?
Jobs and jobs. Because the gas tax was needed because we have a huge deficit in the infrastructure of the Commonwealth. It was mentioned earlier, and it's true that the last time it was raised was 1991. Most prices for just about anything have increased dramatically since 1991. The cost of steel, that it's essential for most bridges, has increased largely because the Chinese are buying up whatever steel they can get. The cost of asphalt has increased because it's got oil in it, and the price of oil, for the most part, has gone up. The price of labor goes up. The price of land that's sometimes needed for land taking goes up. We have a serious safety issue. It's actually cost people more money and wear and tear on their car to use unsafe roads and roads that are improperly maintained. For us to get the money to the local communities, the governor, because of the question on the ballot, is reluctant to approve the full amount the legislature has approved for Chapter 90, the local road fund, by 1/3, $100 million, because of the uncertainty of the stable source of revenue for that piece. This provides jobs for people in construction. It provides the ability for people to get to work safely and on time, to get goods and services safely to market. Without that, the economy is at serious risk of going back into recession. I don't think we want that.
Representative Fat Man.
Thank you very much for the question. Was it Pam? Ann, my mom's name. I think when you state that raising taxes creates jobs, you've been on Beacon Hill too long. I don't see any economist saying, let's raise taxes and create jobs. That's just counterintuitive. But one of the reasons why I am against the gas tax is because when you fill up your tank in taxes, it costs about $7 per average if you have a 15-gallon vehicle. You have to pay that. He doesn't. To me, that's not right. The second thing is $679,000 is what it costs for us to maintain our roads every mile. And so the number in Massachusetts is about 7 times higher than the rest of the nation. The average is about $100,000. And so we've added to the costs of government over the course of time. I didn't help create these problems. I'm dedicated to trying to solve them. The big dig is a big problem. There was project labor agreements. They only allowed unions to bid on those contracts. That's one of the things that drove up the cost. Not that unions do a bad job, they do a fine job. But when other groups are involved, competing and trying to make more bids, that competition drives price down. And so Massachusetts has got it wrong before I was born. And he's been serving before I was born. And these are the kinds of things that I'd like to try to change.
Next question.
Hi, thank you. I had a question about illegal immigration. I understand that that's a problem, but I'm having a hard time wondering how to prevent illegal immigration, but yet care for children that are the illegal immigration, the recipients of the parents that are here. I just find it really hard to be so cutthroat about the way we say, oh, they shouldn't have any benefits, and et cetera.
Let's start with Representative Fatman.
I appreciate that, and that was something I was trying to get at in my first answer. One thing that I learned about today was since the start of the school year in the town of Milford, there's been 30 new students added to the classrooms and to the school from grade 9 to 12. And they are unlawful immigrants. And so the Commonwealth of Massachusetts requires by law that when they come here, they must be educated. And one of the things that I think, they're children. And, that's something that I think maybe we need to do. But I also think we need to make it so that people follow our laws. And I also think we need to help these communities out. And one of the things that hasn't happened in this state that I will make happen if I'm elected as state senator is a circuit breaker for schools that have an influx of immigrants so that they can have extra funding for aid so that these schools are not stretched. That doesn't exist right now. It does exist in the state of Texas. It's a law that they created, and I think it's a good law. But stretching services and legal Milfordian children having to suffer because they don't have English as the first language, I think is unfair. We need to have some sort of funding mechanism to address that problem, be compassionate about it, but also be litigious about it and follow the law.
Senator Moore.
Well, I don't think the question was answered, if I understood your question correctly, and that is, what about the children who are born here who are United States citizens because of that under federal law? That poses a rather different set of problems because they are citizens and are entitled to the education, entitled to various benefits. There's an option, I suppose, if Representative Fatman has his way, of deporting the parents and leaving the children, but then there's another expense there, and it's obviously socially not acceptable to do that. So it becomes much more difficult to split as Solomon would have done, to split the baby in order to enforce that part of the law. I think we should be compensated for the failure of the federal government to enforce, to maintain our borders and also to deal with folks that have visas but overstay that visa. If that results in additional education costs, additional health care costs by their presence, then the federal government has an obligation. If they're not going to solve the problem, and the way Congress is working, it doesn't look like they will anytime soon, then they ought to come up with some assistance for local communities and for the state to have to deal with the failure of that federal policy.
Okay, next question. We got one way back in the back there. You gonna take one up here, Peter, in the front? Okay.
Earlier, we in the last debate, we learned that I think it was 75% of our state budget was healthcare and education. Why is it so high in our state per capita compared to other states in the United States? Thank you.
Let's start with Senator Moore.
Actually, it's their health care costs. I don't know if you're talking about the education costs and health care both. Is that what the question? Health care costs are very high here, and one of the things that I've done is to lead the effort in 2012 for a health care cost containment bill that has just been implemented by the administration and is beginning to show that we're getting those costs into line with inflation. Mr. Fatman voted against that bill, but it is providing for significant efforts to get our hospitals, our doctors, and others to reduce their costs and not reduce waste in the system, and there is some in the healthcare system, a private system for the most part. There is waste in that system, and they can squeeze that out and make the cost less. I included in that bill was a requirement that insurance companies that sell health insurance must designate at least 90% of their premium to actual health costs of the individual. If they don't, they have to rebate it to either the business or the individual or both that are the purchases of those premiums. That's already returned last year something like $55 million to individuals and to small businesses that purchase health insurance. Those are steps that I think we can take and will continue to take. The estimates of the experts tell us that over the next 15 years, that will save Massachusetts, the people of Massachusetts, about $200 billion. That's a pretty big savings, and the rest of the states are looking very closely at getting to that effort. Education costs are not a lot higher than in other parts of the country. In fact, I know we're lower than many, and part of that is that we have, over the course of the recessions, the state has not had the money to subsidize public education to the degree that it did in the past. At one time, the state was subsidizing, I think, roughly 50% of the cost at UMass and at state universities.
Moore. Thank you. Representative Fatman.
Thank you very much. And Michael, thank you for the question. I did vote against the cost containment bill, and I know I'll get to the genesis of your question, but I don't think it has been a success. The rate of inflation did outpace medical. It did. And, I think that one of the reasons why we have such an expensive healthcare system and education is very bureaucratic. It's packed. And I think that we need to reform that and make it less bureaucratic and also make it easier for people. One thing that, just to go on the side of education, because Senator Moore took on healthcare, education is near and dear to my heart. I think my mom's a teacher, and I have student debt, about $40,000. And so I think education in the state is expensive. And, we pay administrators at the UMass systems a lot of money. And we continuously raise their salaries. And one of the things I've supported is making sure that we freeze these salaries and stop, because those costs are levied onto the students. And I think that's wrong. There's a lot of students who are coming out with massive amounts of debt, and it's going to have far-reaching consequences on our economy, especially in the housing market. When you come out with $100,000 in debt and you look towards buying a house in the next 10 years of your life, it's virtually impossible, especially when the economy is not doing well. But I disagree with Senator Moore. I think that education costs are high. And I know people who have gone to UNH over UMass, or to University of Connecticut over UMass. And students make those decisions every day. The economy as well has hurt us from a standpoint where people are going more and more to local colleges, community, state schools, and that drives up the costs, drives up the fees. And I think students trying to make it in Massachusetts in the public education system struggle every day. I'm their peer, and I'll be willing to work on that issue.
Thank you, Representative Fatman. We have time for one more question before we go to closing statements. Right over here.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Mike Visconti. I'm a resident of Milford. A number of years back, in an effort to curb welfare fraud and control illegal immigration, a federal mandate required all states to adopt what's called a Real ID system. Massachusetts defiantly refuses to adopt the Real ID system. Could each of you comment on that, please?
Senator Moore.
Well, it's the governor refuses to adopt Real ID, and he has not put forward that proposal to the legislature to vote on. The state has a waiver until 2016 at the moment for implementation of that. I frankly think we should have it. And the administration, I would believe that either Attorney General Coakley or Mr. Baker would probably have a different view on that than the governor has. So we may be able to get that issue resolved, but it has not been a legislative mandate. It has been the executive that has chosen whether to accept that or not.
Representative Fatman.
Thank you for the question, Mike. I think it's a failure of leadership by the governor. I don't know what he's thinking. And that's why I support Charlie Baker. When I saw that, I called him up and said, Charlie, what do you think about this? He said, ridiculous. This is something that will become implemented if I become governor. And then the Patrick administration announced that they also plan on giving licenses out to people who are here legally. And so I was the only one in this race and in this area legislatively that spoke up against that and said that's unacceptable. And I was joined by Bill Buckley, one of the local selectmen, who said it's not acceptable. It's just another incentive for unlawful immigration to Massachusetts. And so I think that when you think about these things, and it just highlights the reason why two-party government is really important, because we haven't gotten it right, and we need to.
Thank you. Thank you both. That concludes the citizen participation portion of tonight's forum. We will now move to closing statements. Senator Moore will go first.
Well, the Great Recession of recent years seems to be abating. I know well that too many people are still hurting financially, perhaps still unemployed or underemployed. That's why my priority has been and is to promote private sector job growth. I know parents who are worried about the affordability of both early childhood education and college education. Mr. Fatman went to private colleges for undergraduate and graduate work, and obviously those are a little more expensive because they're private colleges, they're not the state university. We have actually provided in the budget this year that he opposed additional money for the University of Massachusetts, so they hold the line on fees and on tuition. Whether it's getting funding to help Milford Regional Medical Center gain electronic health records, or for traffic and road improvements in any of the numerous projects and services that benefit the towns and the residents of the senatorial district, I've listened to what the residents and community leaders need, and I've brought real results time and time again. Whether it's services or legislation needed to improve the life of the disabled or our senior citizens, improve mental health and address the scourge of drug abuse, support efforts to reduce domestic violence, help our young people to afford a college education, increase the likelihood of early childhood education, and any of the numerous other programs that make life better for our fellow residents. I've been there listening to the people and taking action to address those issues. There's still a lot more to do until everyone can be part of the economic recovery, and I have the knowledge, the experience, and yes, the energy to keep working for you and everyone in this region. I don't just talk about standing up for this district. I stand up for you time and time again. I don't just talk about change, I make it happen. I ask for your support and your vote on November 4th, not to advance my personal political career as the next stepping stone, but to continue to care about your needs and your community, and to keep working for you as your state senator. Thank you.
Representative Fatman.
Thank you very much to all of you for coming tonight. Thank you, Senator Moore, for the respectful debate. Thank you to our moderators for hosting this. Today is my grandmother's 91st birthday. And while she's no longer with us, nor is my grandfather, I'm often wondering in my mind what they would think, the greatest generation, and how they would look at my generation and the responsibilities that have been laid out to me. My wife and I often talk about this, whether it be in everyday life, driving home, and we think we need to make a difference. I've always believed that this race is about the past versus the future. Whether we choose to move forward or we continue to look backward. I think Senator Moore's a great guy. I don't always agree with him. On a personal level, I like him. He may not think so during this campaign, but he is a good guy. And I think that the issues before us require change. It's what I've heard every single time I've gone to doors, and I've gone to doors a lot, 16,000 plus times. And I hear people talk to me about their struggles, about how it's unfair to see the welfare system used for alcohol, tobacco products, lottery tickets, when they struggle every single day to put food on the family for their table. I see people who I've met that are legal Massachusetts residents because they immigrated here the right way, and their jobs are taken by people who choose not to. To me, this is a state that has been headed in the wrong direction for quite some time. In 1990, we had 3.2 million jobs. Today, we have about 3.19. We've had more speakers of the House indicted than jobs created in 2 decades. That's not a state heading in the right direction. If you vote for me, I will promise to make Massachusetts a place you are proud to call home, where people want to live, raise a family, have a career, and spend the rest of their life. If that's what you want, if that is what you hope for, I ask for your vote on November 4th. Say, if you could remember Fat Man in November, I'd greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank both candidates for an excellent debate, and I would like to thank all of you for coming here this evening. The forum is now closed. If you would like to speak to the candidates, they will be mingling around back, and thank you so much for coming.
If you'd like to find out more information about the candidates or about our organization, Citizens for Milford, please look at our website at citizensformilford.com. And please be sure to vote on November 4th.
Thank you.